I'm 32 years old, and I've just lived through one of the hardest weeks of my life. My father died suddenly from a heart attack. The shock of losing him hasn't even had time to settle, because it was immediately followed by something I never imagined I'd have to face. My own family turning into enemies. My parents divorced when I was 15. It wasn't quiet or dignified. My mother had an affair with my father's closest friend, and the fallout tore our family in half. My younger sister, Amy, who is now 28, sided with our mother. I chose to stay with my dad. From that moment on, the four of us never really felt like a family again. My father was a self-made businessman. He built his company from nothing. When I was a kid, it started in our garage as a tiny electronics repair workshop. I still remember weekends spent sorting wires and tiny components, watching him draw circuit diagrams at the kitchen table. Over time, that little operation grew into a chain of stores across the state. His story always inspired me. He worked relentlessly and believed that effort mattered more than luck. After the divorce, he threw himself even deeper into his work. I think it was how he survived the betrayal. Some nights I'd wake up and see light under his office door at 2 in the morning, find him hunched over spreadsheets or sketching new business plans. Yet no matter how busy he became, he never stopped being my father. We had breakfast together every morning. He never missed a school event. He was present in every way that mattered. A few years later, he married Susan. She was kind, warm, and gentle. She never tried to replace my mother, but she was always there when I needed someone to talk to. She supported my dad in everything, traveled with him, helped with his charity projects, and truly became his partner in life. It was good to see him smile again after everything he had endured. My mother's life went in the opposite direction. Her relationship with my father's former friend didn't last. Financial trouble followed. She constantly complained about the divorce settlement, claiming my dad had cheated her out of what she deserved. As far as I know, the agreement was fair. He even left her the house they'd lived in, though she later had to sell it due to money problems. Over the years, she drifted from job to job. She always started with enthusiasm and quit the moment things became difficult. She tried real estate, then retail, then even attempted to start a catering business. Every time, it ended the same way, with blame placed everywhere except on herself. Amy followed the same pattern. She dropped out of college after her first year, saying it wasn't for her. Since then, she bounced between retail and bartending, never staying anywhere for long. She talked endlessly about big dreams, but never followed through on any of them. She remained dependent on our mother. Yesterday was my father's funeral. The church was packed. Business partners, employees, community members, people I recognized from charity events and company picnics came to pay their respects. I stood at the front and delivered his eulogy, speaking about his work ethic, his kindness, and the way he believed in people. I talked about how he taught me that business wasn't just about profit, but about creating opportunities and supporting a community. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. My mother and Amy were there too, which surprised me. They hadn't spoken to him in years. Part of me was glad they came. Another part of me felt uneasy. Why now? After the service, while people moved through the hall offering condolences, I noticed my mother and sister standing in a corner whispering. They didn't see me nearby. What I heard made my blood run cold. My mother said that now they finally had a chance to get what they were owed. Amy replied that they needed to aim high, at least 80% of the inheritance. They planned to challenge the will, claiming my father hadn't been in his right mind when he wrote it, that my mother deserved far more for supporting him all those years while he built the business. They were plotting this at his funeral. I felt sick. This wasn't just greed. It felt like a betrayal of everything my father stood for. He taught me to earn what I had, and here they were, talking about taking what they hadn't built. I wanted to confront them right there, but I didn't. This was his funeral. I refused to turn it into a scene. Instead, I decided to wait, to observe, and to prepare. In the days that followed, I watched them closely. They suddenly became overly polite to Susan, which was completely out of character. I understood the act. They were trying to win her over. I caught Amy rummaging through my father's office, claiming she was looking for old family photos while standing in front of his document cabinet. They were searching for something, anything, to use against the will. Then came the meeting with my father's lawyer. Susan sat quietly, still numb with grief. My mother and Amy shifted in their seats, exchanging looks. I kept my face neutral. The lawyer read the will. Most of the estate went to Susan and me. My father left the business to me, since I had been working alongside him and understood it inside and out. Susan received the house and a substantial portion of his savings. Several charitable organizations were named as beneficiaries. My mother and sister were each left $10,000. The room exploded. My mother began shouting about betrayal, about sacrifice, about how she had stood by him while he built everything. Amy joined in, accusing my father of punishing her for choosing our mother during the divorce, accusing me of already having won because I lived with him. It was obvious they had rehearsed this. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I told them I had overheard their conversation at the funeral. I said I knew they intended to challenge the will. I asked them how they could focus on money while we were supposed to be grieving. My mother tried to justify herself, talking about how hard her life had been after the divorce. She skipped over how she had wasted what she received. Amy accused me of always taking our father's side. I reminded them how they had cut him out of their lives, how he had tried to reconnect, how they had refused. He didn't owe them anything. The fact that he left them something at all was proof of his generosity. They stormed out, threatening legal action. Susan broke down in tears. The lawyer assured us that the will was solid, but warned that if they chose to fight, it could become long and ugly. Since then, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Relatives are divided. Some support me. Others say I should give in for the sake of peace. But this is my father's legacy, and I won't let them destroy it. Since that meeting, my life has felt like it's been hijacked by someone else's nightmare. Messages started pouring in from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some told me I was doing the right thing, that my mother and sister were blinded by greed, and that my father had every right to distribute his estate as he saw fit. Others urged me to be the bigger person, to give them more money so the family could heal. A few even suggested I hand over part of my share just to avoid conflict. I refused. My father spent his life building something real. He earned every dollar. He chose where it should go. That was his right. My mother lost any moral claim to his legacy the moment she betrayed him. Amy made her choice when she cut him out of her life. For years, I was the one learning the business, studying the finances, listening to my father talk about expansion plans and employee welfare. I knew what this company meant to him. I began preparing for war. I went through old financial records, learning everything about the company's history. I spoke with longtime employees. The picture became clear. The business didn't truly flourish until after the divorce, when my father poured everything into it. My mother's claim that she supported him through it all was exaggerated at best. One veteran employee, Jim, told me how my father had hired him when no one else would. Jim had a criminal record from his youth and couldn't get a second chance anywhere. My dad brought him in as a cleaner. Over time, he trained him, trusted him, and eventually made him a store manager. There were dozens of stories like that. My father didn't just build a business, he built people. Those stories strengthened my resolve, but doubt crept in at night. Was I being too rigid? Would a compromise be wiser? Not because they deserved it, but because I was exhausted. Grief, pressure, responsibility, family conflict, it all piled up. Part of me wondered if writing them a larger check would make everything stop. Then the lawsuit arrived. My mother and Amy had hired an aggressive inheritance attorney. The filing claimed my father had been mentally unfit when he wrote his will. It painted my mother as a devoted spouse who had helped build the business and was unjustly cast aside. They demanded 80% of the estate, exactly what I had overheard at the funeral. I hired my own lawyer. My father's longtime legal advisor, Tom, agreed to represent Susan and me. He knew our family, the business, and my father's history. He was confident we would win, but he warned me the process could drag on for months or even years. And then things became uglier. My mother and sister began spreading rumors. They told people that Susan had manipulated my father into changing his will. They claimed I had been stealing from the company for years. They told employees that we planned to sell the business and fire everyone. None of it was true, but rumors don't need truth to spread. I spent days on the phone reassuring staff. Some longtime clients began hesitating, asking whether they should continue working with us. I overheard 2 new employees whispering in the break room about whether they should start job hunting. I called a company-wide meeting and addressed everything directly. I explained what was happening, what the lawsuit claimed, and what the truth was. I promised that no one was losing their job, that the business was staying exactly where it was. It broke something inside me to realize I had to defend my father's name to people who had known him for decades. Susan suffered the most. She wasn't built for this kind of conflict. I found her one evening sitting in my father's old office, holding one of his sweaters and crying. She asked me, "Do you think he would have wanted all this?" I didn't know how to answer. I tried to reach my mother and sister directly. They stopped responding. Everything went through lawyers. The last time I ran into Amy by chance in a grocery store, I thought I could speak to her without our mother present. The moment she saw me, her face hardened. She accused me of turning the family against them, of stealing what belonged to them. When I reminded her how they had treated our father, she smirked and said, "You were always his golden boy." Then she walked away. It felt like speaking to a stranger. The family split. Some relatives stood firmly with me. Others said I was heartless. At one family dinner, my cousin yelled at me for destroying the family. I left before it became a public fight. What was meant to be a gathering to mourn my father turned into a battlefield. Sleep became a luxury. I lost weight. I looked older. Every day revolved around lawyers, documents, staff meetings, damage control. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, stubble I forgot to shave. Constant exhaustion. Sometimes I thought maybe it would be easier to give in. Then I remembered my father's face when he told me the business would be mine. The trust in his eyes, the pride, and I knew I couldn't betray that. I started documenting everything. Missed calls, messages, rumors, witness statements. Tom said it could all matter. I gathered testimonies from employees who had seen the company grow after the divorce. I prepared evidence showing my mother's claims were fiction. We also began something new. Susan and I decided to establish a scholarship fund in my father's name for local students interested in electronics and business. It felt right. It honored what he believed in, giving people a chance. The response was overwhelming. Schools reached out. Teachers thanked us. One principal offered to present the first scholarship at graduation. In the middle of chaos, it became a small island of light. My mother and sister rejected every attempt at compromise. When Tom relayed their counteroffer, I almost laughed. They would drop the lawsuit if I gave them 70% of the estate and stepped away from the company entirely. It was absurd. That was when I finally understood. Nothing would ever be enough for them. So I stopped trying to reason. If they wanted a war, I would finish it. The court battle stretched on for months. Every hearing felt like reopening a wound that never had time to heal. My mother's attorney built a dramatic narrative. A devoted wife who had sacrificed everything. A woman pushed aside once her husband outgrew her. He spoke about emotional labor, invisible support, lonely nights. He tried to paint my father as a man who used people and then discarded them. Experts were brought in to talk about how spouses co-build success. My mother testified, describing years of hardship, conveniently leaving out the affair with my father's best friend. She cried in the courtroom. Some people in the audience believed her. It made me sick. Tom was ready. He presented financial records, timelines, testimonies from employees who had watched the company struggle during the marriage and grow only after the divorce. He showed that my mother had received a fair settlement. He revealed how the business survived only because my father mortgaged his own home to keep paying salaries. Then Jim took the stand. He told his story, the criminal record, the rejection, the second chance my father gave him. He spoke about long nights at the warehouse, about my father working alongside everyone else, sleeves rolled up, about how the company became a family for people who had nowhere else to go. When Jim finished, the courtroom was silent. But the moment that shattered everything came from a place no one expected. After the funeral, Amy had searched through my father's office. She'd found an old notebook, his journal from the years surrounding the divorce. She and my mother assumed it would help their case, show emotional instability. Instead, it destroyed them. During discovery, the journal was handed over. Tom read excerpts aloud in court. My father had written about sleepless nights, about trying to save the company while his marriage collapsed, about refinancing the house to make payroll, about coming home desperate to talk to my mother, only to find her gone, spending money he didn't have. One entry cut through me like a blade. He wrote about walking past my bedroom late at night, about watching me sleep, about deciding in that moment that he would keep going, no matter how exhausted he felt. For my son, he wrote, I will build something he can be proud of. I couldn't breathe. My mother's face went pale. Amy stared at the table. Their own evidence had buried them. The ruling came swiftly after that. The judge dismissed their claims. The will stood. My mother and sister were ordered to cover our legal costs. It was a total victory. But it didn't feel triumphant. It felt hollow. Relief, yes, but also grief. For my father, for the family we used to be, for the version of my mother and sister I thought I had. The rumors collapsed after the verdict. Some were legally classified as defamation. We didn't sue, but the threat was enough. They were forced to issue public retractions. Relatives who once doubted me quietly apologized. The business stabilized. In a strange way, transparency strengthened trust. Employees rallied around us. Clients returned. The scholarship fund launched its first awards that year. Standing on that stage, speaking about my father's belief in effort and second chances, I finally felt like I was honoring him, not just defending him. Susan stood beside me through everything. She became my anchor. In the quiet moments, she reminded me that family isn't just blood. It's loyalty. It's values. It's who stands with you when things burn. I haven't spoken to my mother or sister since the trial ended. Even if they withdrew tomorrow, the damage is permanent. Too many lines were crossed. Too much was said. Sometimes I think about the old family photos, the ribbon cutting at the first store, my parents smiling, Amy and I clapping as kids. I don't know how we became strangers, but I do know this. My father built more than a business. He built a legacy of integrity, and I will protect it no matter what it costs. This chapter is closed. The future is mine to build.